I was like, this is not going to happen. I'm going to talk about something else, Amazon, anything. And then this happened yesterday with the Financial Times piece published by Robert Cookson, which contains quotes from Robert Kinsell, YouTube's head of content and business operations, who states that the service will start blocking music videos from labels that haven't signed on to its new terms in a matter of days. So this, of course, caused a massive uproar in the industry. Everybody's is up in arms, wondering what's going to happen. Nobody actually thought that YouTube was going to go through with it and actually start pulling videos from independent labels, and nobody actually knows what pulling means at this point. I woke up this morning with the realization that it's going to be very difficult for YouTube to actually start pulling stuff completely down. It might maybe halt monetization of the videos, but actually pulling it would really put it in the crosshairs of regulators, both in the US and in Europe, especially, where regulators are go down pretty hard on this kind of behaviors by monopolistic enterprises, essentially. And so many points of view to look at. For example, I was listening to the Daily Tech News show by Tom Merritt yesterday. He made a really good point, saying that the company may invalidate its safe harbor status in the US by blocking content on its platform for no valid reason, essentially. And finally, Vivo's status is also a question mark. We don't know what's going to happen to that content. The company Vivo states that they are still going to have those videos on YouTube if they're going through them, but really it's a question mark there. So really, what are your thoughts? Dan, you're in San Francisco. What's the sort of latest around there in the music community as an independent label? Do you feel like YouTube is going to go through with this, or is it just insane? What's happening?
They certainly are acting like they're going to go through with it. I'm not sure why they would even threaten to do this unless they were planning on taking action, because this isn't exactly a popular statement, as you say. I've heard this referred to in a couple different places as a declaration of war. Now that might be a bit of hyperbole, but I can see the logic there. This is something that's going to hit. They say it's about 10% of indie labels, but includes some big ones. It includes XL, includes Domino. So this means that we're going to be, if they go through with it, and if the regulators allow them to go through with it, it means Radiohead videos might be disappearing. It means that there's issues. It's a thornier, and like you say, which videos even get taken down, I think
exactly.
It's open to debate. Take something like Adele, which is on XL in the UK and Columbia in the States. So are her videos taken down in the UK only, or are they kept up in the States? I mean, it's a bit of a logistical minefield, and it's a very aggressive action on YouTube's part.
Yeah.
I have to assume that they spoke amongst themselves and crunched the numbers and decided that it was important enough to them to get labels on board for this new paid service that they're going to be launching.
Yeah.
So important that they're essentially prepared to use the nuclear option on labels who aren't willing to go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And Duncan, what are your thoughts, considering that you've also covered this space for a number of years, and this seems like a really strange fight to pick, because independents are going to stir emotions. If they pick the same fights with the majors, I don't think people would have had the same reaction. But because independents are involved, I think there's going to be a huge uproar here.
I mean, like you said in the introduction to this story, this is something that we don't actually know a whole lot about yet, especially the mechanics of the whole situation, how this is going to work. At the moment, it seems to be just a lot of bluster and loud noises. But what I think is interesting in a kind of placing it within this kind of historical context is that you don't often see Google playing hardball quite so publicly. They often like to cultivate a very, very kind of fluffy, nice, warm, everybody be friends image.
Yeah.
And they're not really doing this. And partly you could say that's because it's the indies that dragged this out into the open about a month ago with that angry letter, and then more recently. But it's very rare to see Google not then try and make some public steps to calm things down.
Right.
It's an odd situation, and I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, because I thought at one point surely like the quote was misstated, and there's going to be a correction coming from YouTube soon around what actually was said in the Financial Times piece and what they actually meant. But now over 24 hours later, we haven't had any retraction or correction from YouTube, and so that's kind of weird.
They seem to be quite happy to just see what happens for the time being, which, I mean, may be the best policy. I mean, they may be waiting to gauge what the public reaction is to this. I mean, you say it's going to kind of stir emotions. I think maybe not as many as it would have done, say, 5 years ago.
Right.
Because there are, you know, a lot of these indie artists are quite big, but I think that they sort of sit alongside the majors very, very much now in a way that perhaps they didn't used to.
Yeah, I mean, I also take exception to the percentage that was presented as well, because I was at a Merlin keynote of Charles Caldas at the AIM Music Connected Day just a couple of months ago, and he was talking about the fact that independent labels have a 30+%. It was 32, I think, market share when it comes to digital I think it was in the US, but I just have to double check on that.
Is that in terms of downloads or streams or YouTube
I think it was
views,
overall digital market share for the independents. And here, you know, we're seeing the statement saying that they have 90% of labels on board and 10% are not. But then if all of the labels that are represented by AIM and all the other independent bodies worldwide are on the same boat and are making a united front on this, then I can't understand how they can claim that they have 90% of the content or of the labels on board. It doesn't add up.
No, definitely. I think one of the... Go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think one of the dangers here is that this isn't just inside baseball. This is something that will affect fans and consumers as well.
Right.
And, you know, the rest of the world, aside from this, you know, slightly rarefied music industry, doesn't necessarily care too much about royalties and percentages. But when you're a 14-year-old and you want to go and watch your new favorite video and you go onto YouTube and it's blocked, I think we're in danger of seeing an uproar from fans and consumers as well. I'll say that if I were Vimeo right now, I'd be meeting in my war room to make plans and see how we could capitalize on this.
Yeah,
sure, absolutely. But I mean, I think in the situation you just described, where a 14-year-old goes and finds that his favorite video isn't on YouTube, the first place he heads is the Pirate Bay. It's not. He doesn't get angry. He just goes and downloads it somewhere else, which doesn't give any money to the bands at all.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the other thing that YouTube could do, again, in the realm of speculations, would be to remove access to the monetization features and leave the videos up there, which would hurt the bands equally as much and probably force them to pull the video, but maybe wouldn't run into the same regulatory hurdles that it might run into if it actually actively removes the video because they don't want to accept their terms.
I mean, I think if they remove sort of tools like Content ID from the labels as well alongside this stuff, then that would really erode their argument big time, because then that casts them very much as a company that doesn't respect copyright at all, if you take away tools for the labels to protect themselves in that way. Yeah,
we'll see what happens. I mean, again, we're speculating here. We've seen some strong statements from the Indie Music Week conference by Rich Bengloff, the president of A2IM, who sort of backs up the indie position that YouTube is not playing by the rules here, or playing fairly. And we'll see what happens next week. I'm sure we might have to open up with this story once again, because it's probably one of the biggest stories of the year after Apple buying Beats, actually probably bigger than Apple buying